Okay, so what if you could conquer an entire nation without firing a single bullet? Sounds like something out of a spy movie, right? Well, today we're cracking open a really fascinating and honestly pretty controversial document from 1955. It claims to be a top-secret Soviet textbook, a manual for a whole new kind of war. A war fought not on some battlefield, but right inside your own head.
And right off the bat, the manual hits you with this chilling definition. It really sets the tone for the whole thing. It calls this new science psychopolitics, the art of conquering an enemy by, get this, weaponizing mental healing. We're talking about a blueprint for turning therapy into a tool for political control. Just let that sink in.
All right, so the big question is, where in the world did this creepy manual come from? And well, this is where the story takes a really strange turn. It honestly raises way more questions than it answers.
Okay, check this out. The cast of characters connected to this thing is just bizarre. On one hand, the text is supposedly an address from Lavrenti Beria, the incredibly brutal and feared head of Stalin's secret police. But then, the actual publisher listed on the document? The Hubbard College of Scientology. Yeah, as in L. Ron Hubbard. That massive contradiction is the core of this whole mystery.
And if that wasn't weird enough, the guy who supposedly compiled the whole thing, a man named Charles Stickley, says right in his own foreword, and I'm paraphrasing here, "I can't entirely vouch for this." So from the very first page, the editor himself is telling you he's not sure if it's real. It just makes the whole thing even more mysterious.
So, okay, forget about who wrote it for a second. Let's just look at what's inside. The manual lays out this incredibly detailed and, frankly, disturbing philosophy for how to conquer someone's mind. Let's dig into the core ideas here. So, what exactly is psychopolitics according to this book? It's not just your standard propaganda. No. This is about the very specific targeted use of psychology and psychiatry as weapons. The goal? To break down individuals and from there entire nations completely from the inside out. Now, to justify these pretty extreme methods, the manual pushes this incredibly dark and cynical view of humanity. It basically argues that people are just animals, just a collection of stimulus response mechanisms. And in this worldview, things we consider strengths, like individualism or having a strong will, are actually reframed as mental illnesses that need to be fixed. Loyalty isn't a choice you make, it's just alignment with the state. And if you're disloyal, well, that's a sickness that has to be cured with force and brutality.
But this dark philosophy isn't just a bunch of theories. The manual turns it into a step-by-step playbook for total subversion. It lays out a systematic psychological war, one that's fought on 3 separate fronts.
Okay, front number 1. This one is the much personal. It's the battle for the individual mind. The primary targets are people with influence. We're talking leaders, politicians, thinkers, anyone who matters. And the goal is simple and terrifying. Break their will and totally realign their loyalties.
And the tactics they suggest, they're absolutely brutal. The manual says flat out that things like electric shock and brain surgery should be used for punishment, not for therapy. It talks about something called pain drug hypnosis to literally implant commands into someone's mind. It even goes so far as to suggest driving the families of powerful people insane just to get to them, or arranging suicides for key opponents to just get them out of the way.
So, after going after individuals, the manual pulls the camera back. Front number 2 is a war on the pillars of society itself. The target here is all the institutions that give a country its identity, its character, and its strength.
The whole strategy here is to rot the country from the inside. The manual tells its operatives to literally smash religious groups by convincing people that faith is a sign of insanity. It says to weaken the family, and then there's this really cynical part. It says to infiltrate and take over actual mental health campaigns. Why? To get money, influence, and public trust, all from a population that has no idea what's happening.
And that brings us to the third and final front. This one is the long game. This is the battle for the future. The goal is to make sure the nation can never recover by corrupting its young people and cutting them off from their own culture and country. The tactics for this front are all about creating a generation lost to chaos. The book actually encourages promoting things like drug use and juvenile delinquency. It says to undermine patriotism to create apathy. It even talks about twisting things like child labor laws to stir up resentment and rebellion in teenagers. And a huge goal is to reframe all crime as just a mental problem. That way, you take power away from the courts and give it to the psychopolitical operatives.
So you've got this three-pronged attack going on, against individuals, against society's pillars, and against the youth. But what's the end game? What does winning even look like for these psychopolitical operatives? Well, the manual is disturbingly clear about that.
This one quote from the text really says it all. To produce a maximum of chaos in the culture of the enemy is our first most important step. See, the goal isn't to win a debate. It's just to create as much chaos as possible, because a confused, demoralized, and divided country is a country that can't fight back. And that chaos is just the first part of a four-step plan for victory. Step 1, create that chaos, degrade the population. Step 2, get rid of the nation's leaders, or at least discredit them, leaving everyone exhausted and scared. Step 3, once the country hits rock bottom, you swoop in and offer your ideology, the manual says communism, as the only path to peace. And step 4, conquest. A complete takeover, all without firing a single shot.
And that's the final victory, the ultimate goal. A population so completely broken that they literally beg to be enslaved, just so they can have some peace. But here's the kicker, the final, cynical twist. The whole operation is designed to be paid for by the target nation itself, through their own mental health grants. You make a country pay for its own downfall.
Which of course brings us right back to that central, nagging question. What is this thing? Is it a genuine Soviet blueprint for psychological warfare? Is it some really clever anti-communist propaganda designed to scare people? Or, when you think about its bizarre origins, is it something else entirely? You know, whether it's a real playbook or a total fabrication, its ideas about creating chaos, division, and controlling people's minds, well, they feel unnervingly relevant today. It leaves us with a fascinating and honestly a pretty unsettling historical puzzle to think about.